you're looking for speakers there, but now you're still, that's what you are doing, but you're just organizing it.
Yeah, we are actually looking for speakers there, but then since most of the crowds are Cantonese speaking, so we are interviewing English-speaking professors on a private basis so that we can provide Chinese and English translation on the internet.
I see. Okay.
So we're going to do subtitles.
Sure.
And all that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's internet exposure and that's crowd exposure.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
So you're free to interview
Yeah.
Jonathan if you'd like.
Would you like to interview me, or?
Oh yeah, we do. But actually, since we do not know really a lot about Vietnam or your specialty, so we would like to perhaps discuss some questions for you before we actually start the recording.
Okay.
Or you can feel free to talk about.
Yeah.
To enlighten us.
No, I mean, my expertise on Vietnam is not relevant, really. My expertise on comparative political economy and on social movements. I teach a master's course on social movements in developing countries. And, there are many parallels between politics in developing countries and Hong Kong. In particular, Hong Kong is a strange kind of political unit since it's not independent, right? And it also, of course, has a colonial history. And China is, of course, a developing country, even though it's rapidly industrializing. And so, as a scholar of comparative international development and comparative politics, myself and others in our department are familiar with a range of different country experiences. Because when you talk about democratic theory, you're talking about the whole universe of cases of democracies or democratic transitions, or just even more broadly, political systems. So anytime you talk about theory, you're talking about a whole range of different cases. And so, for example, our way to understand the Hong Kong case is not simply to say, oh, this theory fits here, let's see how Hong Kong can fit into this, right? It is to understand the relationship between Hong Kong's experiences and the experiences of other countries. So theory is practical in this context, because we're talking about the actual historical experiences of countries, both with respect to their political development and also more specifically with respect to social movements, which is what we have in Hong Kong right now, right? A large social movement that is trying to achieve some political goals. And there's a whole set of international experiences about what a social movement is, how it operates, why they usually fail and why they sometimes succeed, what are the role of young people in social movements, what are the problems we confront with respect to organizing resources and things of this nature. Okay? And then there's a whole other area of discussion and debate and research about democratic politics. And, essentially, scholars who study social movements, who study political change, who study democracy, they learn from a variety of different country experiences. But we are right now in Hong Kong and it's happening around us. And so we're trying to make sense of what's occurring. And we're not trying to pretend like other countries can teach us what to do or other experiences can teach us what to do. We can't even assume that Hong Kong's experience in 2003 can help us see what to do, or Tiananmen Square for that matter. What we need to do is try to understand the present with reference to a broader set of historical experiences, and that can be useful because one of the things that you can do is try, not always succeed, to avoid some mistakes or to recognize the importance of certain problems. For example, this morning there were divisions within the movement. That's incredibly typical. It happens to all social movements. And the question that you have to ask yourselves and ask of the broader experience is, under what conditions do social movements successfully avoid those kind of traps and form a solid, united organization that is capable of achieving an objective. And one of the things that requires, for example, is having an extremely clear agenda And that's not something that people are observing right now. A lot of people are saying they're hearing different messages. You have at least three different groups that have been identified. I'm sure there are more. Scholarism, the United Federation of Students, and also the so-called pan-democratic camp. But that does not exhaust the range of people who are interested in the movement. There are other groups that perhaps are not sufficiently organized yet, but are out there. For example, some labor organizations have called a strike. But what is evident to people like me and my colleagues who observe these sorts of things in other countries is that the clear political agenda that we observe in successful social movements it has not really materialized yet in Hong Kong. People know what they want in a sense, but they have not connected this issue of being able to select a leader with a broader set of socioeconomic issues. The question is, why do you want political change, right? So, as an independent person in this, I certainly have my views and I sympathize with the movement just because of my own values. But as a scholar, one of the things that we try to do is to understand and explain why the social movement can be successful in some respects and not in other respects, and that can be, of value. I'll just give you one example. One of the very simple but useful concepts that exists in social movement theory is called framing. And framing is just like taking a photo. Whenever you take a photograph, you're always choosing which issues to focus on, right? You're always trying to zoom out or zoom in, and you're making a choice about how you want to frame the picture, right? And so, that's one of the challenges that confronts you. It's also one of the challenges that confront authorities. For example, they are trying to frame this issue as a bunch of, an issue in which we have a bunch of well-meaning but confused young people who want rights, but they don't understand that it's practical. It's that it's impossible to change Beijing's view, right? For example, that's the argument. Whereas you're trying to frame this as a situation in which, Beijing has made a terrible miscalculation, and local authorities have not listened to what local people really want, and instead they keep on saying, Beijing says this, Beijing says that, and you're trying to frame it as well, what are our leaders all about? Who are they accountable to? Are they accountable to Beijing, or are they accountable to people in Hong Kong? And these are sensitive issues, and obviously they're contentious issues. People disagree. Yesterday, there's another social movement, right, in Hong Kong, and it's going in the opposite direction. It's called the Movement for Peace and Democracy, right? And they were mobilizing yesterday, and they were trying to frame the issue as well. You guys are doing harm to the Hong Kong economy. You're undermining your own parents' economic status or thing. That's the argument they make, right? So there's a lot of competition right now. That's essentially what this is a big competition, but it's under very pressured circumstances. And so, the value of people talking about experiences from other countries is not to tell you what you can do or to give you a recipe for a 100% guaranteed success or your money back. Instead, it is, given the wealth of historical experience, it's possible for you to conduct yourself in a way that history suggests will be more effective. That doesn't mean success, but it does mean, bringing ideas into the way you conduct yourselves. Because if you're just simply wandering around and yelling and shouting with no idea what you're doing, then it's useless. Now the problem, of course, is how do you do that? And we have, a remarkable group of people. We have the pan-democrats, who, many of whom, of course, they're sincere. but they've had internal fragmentation, and they have difficulty agreeing among themselves, right? We have Joshua Wong and company. Now everybody's turning him into a rock star, which he is, I guess. But he's a 17-year-old kid, and there are tens of thousands of other young people of that age. And then you have the university students, and presumably other groups too. For example, different occupational groups, teachers, laborers, and so on. And so what hasn't quite occurred yet, and it's by no means unusual, is that these groups coming together to speak with a common voice, and that's it's very common, but it's also it's a problem because without a coherent message, without a compelling way of framing the issues, you're likely to see sympathy dwindle. But so it's that's just one sort of example. If you look at international research on grassroots politics, social movements, there are a whole range of different kinds of issues that you can consider. What sorts of organization work? There's a very interesting debate that's emerged recently that you guys are actually contributing to in a way. It's there's a book that received a lot of attention that was called The Net Delusion. And the net delusion is the delusion that simply by going online and engaging in communication. There's another book that's called Networks of Outrage and Hope, right? That doesn't do it, and you have confirmed that. Essentially, young people have said, what, talking on the internet is fun, but it gets you so far, and they've gone into a more kind of direct action. But it really is, it's about ideas much more than people realize, because ideas, of course, inform the way you behave. And so there are a number of people in the Hong Kong intellectual community who are in an extremely weird circumstance. On the one hand, we have a significant amount of knowledge about international experience. On the other hand, most of us are not citizens.